Reasonable.
Thanks. Okay, we are already on. Okay, we're going to begin with the learning sponsors, and then we'll continue. It- The gentlemen, I'm going to start with learning sponsors, and then we'll go from there to the doc. A Year of Learning by Sarah Alpert in memory of her husband, Rav Tzvi Lippert ben Hillel, Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu ben Yosef Cohen. Friends of Honey Chaifetz, Chana Shoshana bat Yosef. Friends of Jack Prince, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Shmuel Dov. Friends of Sandy Davidoff, Shalomit bat Chaim Eliyahu. Friends of Judy Cohen, Yehudit Lieber bat Moshe. Friends of Dr. Annette Fransky, Hannah bat Ephraim Fischel. Gail and Leslie Kaplan in memory of their parents, Mushka Spritz bat Yosef Chaim Bechava, Hanan ben Moshe Eliezer Vachana. Pesha bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi Vitzipora, Yitzchak ben Yom Moshe Cohen Vachana. Friends of Linda Katz, in memory, Hinda bat Yehoshua. Lee and Harvey Greenberg in memory of their parents, Esther bat Eliezer, Yaakov Yosef ben Abraham, Sarifka bat Baruch Yehuda, B'tzalel ben Abraham Halevi. Friends of Rochelle Ebner, Rachel bat Moshe. Ike and Evelyn Blachler in memory of his sister, Dr. Phyllis Pacheco, Liv Shabbat Israel. A Week of Learning by Leila Bessler in memory of her granddaughter, Penina Margalit Badov. Shirley Weinstein in memory of her husband, Mordechai Ozer ben Yisrael Aharon. Today being the 13th, there is no individual days of learning today. Hashem is heaven aliyah, crank Rafiah, Vati Yeshir, Hashem Atzliah, Mechol B'nai Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael Atchia. All right, and we'll continue momentarily. Okay, there are a few empty spots because a couple people from the DAF have gone on the boat and the cruise. Okay, so if somebody comes in a bit later, I know that Steve Levine is not here. I'm not sure who else immediately. Okay, but there should be others coming in. What? Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's Panamanian. Okay. Okay. I want to know. Right. Okay, gentlemen, let us get ready to start. We got cookies. We're out. No. Okay, I can get those brownies out from back there if you need. Okay. Itmar. Okay. On the last word on right on our previous stop on Kav Vav Amud Beis. Last word, Itmar. About this, wasn't it said as follows? Okay. Right. So, a lot in today's Gemara. Right? Eid Zumam or Eid Zumim. Okay? Eid Zumim. The question is going to be as follows. If somebody, look at Rashi, please, everybody, with me. Okay? I still do. Okay. I told you once that I had a Rebbe that made us look at Meiri more than we did Rashi. But in this case, I want us particularly to see Rashi. Eid Zomem, Eid Benisan, Okay, right, happens. V'huzam, okay, b'tishrei, al edot zo. Okay, all right, so Rashi's already telling us in a situation where he testified in the spring, okay, and later it was shown, okay, to be invalid, okay. Question is going to be, at what point do we no longer, do we consider this individual disqualified for testimony? Do we go back to when he testified in the spring? Or do we only say from this point now in Tishrei, okay, okay, that's the point, and Lahaba, and furthermore, that's when he becomes invalid as a witness. That's right, and we're going to, all right, we're going to get to that in a moment, but I didn't want to rush ahead. Okay, so that's so we're going to
talking about the same testimony,
the same individual, the same individual, whatever he did, whatever he did. Okay, whatever happened. Okay, whatever happened. Okay, it could be that they're saying that's why the question is he going to be? Are we retroactive and say anything he did from back then? All of that is now not valid. So if there were a document that he signed as a witness, okay, sometime between the spring and the fall, okay, that document is invalid. Or are we going to say no, only from the point of time that we discussed, that we clarified that he was invalid, from that point on do we go? Okay, all right. So that's why I said I don't try not to jump ahead till the Gemara presents us with the situation. Okay, so Abaye Marla Mafreya, Abaye who nifsal. Abaye is saying retroactively he is considered to be invalid. Okay, Varaba Amar Mikanu Lahaba hu nifsal. From here on, okay, we're going to say he is invalid. So any document or any act of testimony that could have been taken place, let's say in the summer, between, right, Nisan and Tishrei, that would still be valid. Okay, particularly we're talking about a monetary document, right? Okay. Abaye Amar, this is Abaye giving now further details on his view. Abaye Amar limefreya hu nifsa. Retroactively, he is considered to be invalid. Why? Me'idna da asid rasha. From the time that he gave testimony, he is considered a rasha, okay, a wicked person. V'hatorah amra, and according to the Torah, we have a specific pasuk. El al tashet yadcha im rasha. Don't we'll say accept the wicked as a witness, basically. Al tashet rasha, and don't make somebody wicked a witness. Rava Amar, says Rava, mikan v'ulahaba hu nifsal. From here further on, he is considered to be invalid. Ed zomem chidushu. Why? Because this concept of a invalid witness, I'm going to use that word for the moment. We could use the word challenged witness, could also be a good translation. Okay, all right. In either case, this is a new concept. Okay, namely the idea. Mai, what do we mean? Chazit de samacht ahani. Okay, because we see that basically he relied. How is it new? You're relying on the second set of witnesses that have come to say that individual, as part of the first set of witnesses, is no good. So the question is, you're going to ask, what's the chiddush? Why are you relying on the second set of witnesses and saying they're necessarily better than this first set of witnesses, right? So that's the Gemara's point. Mai chazit. What did you see? The samacht ahani, that you're relying on these second witnesses. Samuch ahani. Okay, rely instead on these others, on this first set of witnesses, right? Ein lecha bo ela mishat chidusho be'elech. And so therefore, argues Rava, you do not have this situation of invalidity except from the time that this new situation, that the point in which he was considered no longer valid, okay, which Rashi has told us now occurred in Tishrei as opposed to back in Nisan. So that's why Rava is saying, no, from that point forward, that's why he is going to be considered invalid.
What's the Kiddush?
Okay, that you're relying on the second set as opposed to the first. Okay, all right. Ika da Amri. Now, there are those who explain it slightly differently, but it's the same topic. Okay, namely Rava Nami Ka'abai Sfirale. It's possible that Rava might be of the opinion of Abai as well. How? Umay Ta'am Ka'amar Mikanu Lahaba. If that's the case, what is the reason that Rava says no, the invalidity only occurs from the time of invalidation and forward, right? Mishum psida de lekuchot. Why? Because in this case, we might say there is a serious loss incurred, okay, because whoever used this fellow as a witness is unaware of his disqualification, having used him as a witness. And so therefore, if it's declared that that document, loan document, whatever monetary document, okay, could have been done between, right, Nisan and Tishrei, now he's going to lose.
Now it's uncollectible.
It's not, you can't do anything with that document. My benai. So what's the difference between our two explanations, asks the Gemara? The situation is such, just as hidu be trei bechad. The situation is that the two of them, the second set of witnesses, testified against one of the two, okay, in that other pair, right? Inami, okay, de pasalinhu begazlunuta. So either they testified him, and that's what made him zomem, okay, because they challenged his, let's say, location at the time that he testified, which was our normal explanation of zomamim, or because he was involved in some, okay, some aspect of thievery. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Diftai, he says, Avad Rav Papi, I'm sorry, Uvda Kevate de Rava. And there was a situation, says Rabbi Yirmiyah of Diftai, that Rav Papi actually made a legal decision according to the view of Rav. Okay? In other words, forward, right? Okay. Mar Barav Ashi. Okay, Mar Baravashi, Amar Hilchata Kavate de Abaye. But somebody else says, no, in this situation, okay, the law is according to Abaye. Okay, and our Gemara then tells us what? Vihilchata Kavate de Abaye. And the law is like Abaye, Bia'al Kagam. Okay, and if you, right, and if you look at Art Scroll 26.2, note number 11. Art Scroll is kind enough to give us the entire, I'm sure, okay, who else are they going to take it from, okay? Okay, okay, so, but Rashi's got to read, you got to go through all the Rashi print and everything like that. Art Scroll was kind enough to list each one separately in English, okay, for those of us who want to do a quick review, okay, or try to memorize it. Either case, though, that's the 6 situations, of which I believe the second is this one, okay? All right, all right, aid, all right? Okay, so you might want to make yourself at least if you've got Art Scroll, circle that particular note or something, because that's worthwhile making sure that you if you don't memorize it, at least you'll have a place, a source to go back and look it up. Okay? All right, let's go on now. Okay. However, what happens? We're going to get to a story that's trying to clarify this situation. Mumar, ochel nevelot leteavo. Okay, I'm going to translate Mumar for the moment as renegade. Okay, all right, who eats nevela, okay, leteavon, with zest, with clear desire, okay, in this case. All right, what happens?
This guy's enjoying.
All right, Divrei, we'll get to him, somebody else. Okay, Divrei Hakol Pasul. According to everybody, he is invalid. Lahachis, but if he does it as an act of defiance of the Torah, okay, not because there may be a real need, okay, but as an act of obstinacy, defiance, Abai Amar Pasul, says Abai, he is invalid. Rava Amar Kasher, and Rava says he is valid. Okay, now we want to try to clarify why is this the case, right? Okay, so our Gemara tells us Abai Amar Pasul, he says, why? Dahavale Rasha, because he committed an act and is a wicked person. V'rachamana Amar, and the Torah says, Al tashet Rasha Ed, don't associate wickedness with a witness. Namely, don't make a person who's wicked a witness. V'Rava Amar, says Rava, kasher. Okay, why? He says, because he says, Rasha dechamas ba'in. We need to declare a person wicked if they're involved in an act of theft. Okay, that was at least one shot. Okay, all right. Yes, Michael, go ahead.
Point is that if there's a kosher hot dog stand at $12 a hot dog, and right next door there's a tray hot dog stand at $2 a hot dog, and you buy the cheaper one, at least part of you're hungry and they're both equally accessible. Rather, he assumes that at least part of your motivation is to save money. So it becomes a monetary matter and you're a Russia. But if you're mad at God and you do an act to tell God you're mad at him, that does not affect your honesty in monetary matters. You could be totally honest, and tomorrow you could be a karata that that's one of the reasons that we don't put on tefillin when immediately after a misa, because the Torah assumes we're mad at God and we're not. So because otherwise it's incredible. A guy who does it in purpose is kosher, and a guy who does it because he's hungry is treif. So Rabbi has to rely on.
Okay, so what are we going to say? Okay, so what happens? Let's go on. All right, gentlemen. The Havale Rasha, the Rahmana Amar al Tashet Rasha Aed, Rava Amar Kasher de Hamas Ba'ina is where we stop. We're now about halfway down the Amud. Okay, Meitive. We challenge this with the following. It says in the pasuk, "V'al tashet resha ed." Don't associate wickedness with the witness. Al tashet chamas ed. We understand that to mean that it's not somebody who's been involved with theft cannot be a witness. Elu gazlanin. Here we're talking about number one, robbers. Umoalin. somebody who abuses an oath, b'shavuot. Okay, in that case, my lav echad. Okay, what are we talking about? What? Okay, right? What are we? What's the situation? Okay, echad shvuot shav. One is in regards to a one kind of oath that is of no value. V'echad shvuat mamon, and is the other a different kind of vow that it has to do with money? No, says the Gemara. Aidi va'aidi shvuat mamon. In both cases, we're talking about a vow pertaining to monetary issues. Umay shvuot. So what do we mean then when we say vows or oaths? Shvuot the alma. We're saying vows or oaths in general. Meitive. Okay, right? Well, we don't know that yet. Okay, meitive. But we have a challenge again. Al tashet resha ed. Again, we have our pasuk. Al tashet chamas ed. Again, implying that it is somebody who hasn't been involved in theft is the wicked person and therefore can't testify. Elu gazlanin. These are then those who are robbers. Umalve reviot. And those who deal with usury, with right? Interest to yuvta da abai yuvta. And this then seems to be a proof text against abai, right? So we saw that while one individual did, however, paskin earlier in favor of Abaye on this issue, the Gemara right now seems to tell us that we have a proof text against Abaye. Okay. Now, what happens? However, the Gemara doesn't seem to be satisfied with this statement. And so the issue is going to continue. Is this machloket between Abaye and Rava? Asks the Gemara. Name a Tanai. Is it based on an earlier Tanaitic issue, argument? Eid Zumem, Pasula Chol HaTorah Kula, Divrei Rabbi Meir. According to Rabbi Meir, okay, a invalidated witness is invalidated for any aspects connected with Torah. Okay, Rabbi Yossi Omer, he says, Medvarim Amorim, Shehuzam B'dinei Nefashot. That's a situation, says Rabbi Yossi, when it only applies when he was invalidated regarding a capital case. Aval Huzam B'dinei Mamonot. But were he involved in a monetary, a financial case, kasher l'dinei nefashot, then he would also still be considered a valid witness in capital cases. Okay? Big difference. Nema Abai Rabbi Meir. Shall we say then that Abai holds like Rabbi Meir, but Rava Rabbi Yossi, and Rava holds like Rabbi Yossi? Can we say that? The Gemara wants to clarify. Abai Rabbi Meir. Abai holds like Rabbi Meir. Why? Da Amar Amrinan Mikula Lechumra. Why? Because we say that we're dealing with a situation that you go from a less grievous situation, okay, to a more grievous situation. Okay.
Here's these guys looting homes that are burning
California.
down, and out in California.
Right.
So how do you take those?
How? Because that's why the police have been told by the fire department not to let, because they were sneaking in as pretending to be firefighters, is what you're asking. And who's to say that if they're looting homes and somebody goes back to try to get
Their
what they
own
feel is
property.
their property righteous, that they're not going to go more than just loot the home, they're going to do worse. Okay, so that's the concept. But I'm going to in a second. I just again want people to point out 27A3, note number 23 in Art Scroll. Okay, again, worthwhile note to mark. Okay, to see a further clarification on this idea of going from less grievous to more grievous. Okay, Michael, you wanted to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say the fact that you would pick up a dollar bill and not give in somebody's house and stick it in your pocket does not, according to the Yossi, mean that you would lie about a guy committing murder. And Reb Meir is saying that if you're that it's a low plug. If you lied about money once, you are a liar, and a liar can't testify. Both positions can be logically supported. That's why it's a machlekes that continued for hundreds of years.
Okay, let's go on. Rava da Amar Rabbi Yossi, and we're saying that Rava then was of the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Da Amar Michumra Lakula Amrina. We can understand that if somebody lies in a more stringent, more grievous situation, then Kol Shekain, I'm going to put that word in there, how much more so do they have no compulsion not to lie in a less serious situation. But I'm going to read in Mikula lechumra, okay, but from a less grievous to a greater lo amrinan, that we say that's not the case. Lo, no, says the Gemara. Aliba the Rabbi Yossi, kuli amalo plige. No, the view of Rabbi Yossi, nobody's disagreeing with. Ki pligi, where do they disagree? Aliba the Rabbi Meir, on the view of Rabbi Meir. Abai ka Rabbi Meir. Do we still say that Abai holds like Rabbi Meir? Rabba ad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Meir hatam. But Rabba does not hold like Rabbi Meir in this particular situation. Well, there. Ela gabe aid zumel. Okay, gabe aid zumem de mamon. But rather regarding an aid, a witness who has been invalidated in a financial case, right? Dira l'shamayim, v'ra l'briut, because there the activity is such that is both an affront to God and an affront to humanity. Translate it that way a little bit. Aval hacha, but in this situation, dira l'shamayim, where in our example of the mumar, okay, right, the mumar and that question of the hachis, I want to quote in quotes only, all right, so to speak, quotes. It's only an affront to God. It's not an affront to humanity. Ve'ein rala brios. Lo, he said. Ve'hilchata kivate de rabba. And therefore, in this logic, I'm sorry, ve'hilchata kivate de abai. And in this logic, we therefore say, no, the law is acceptable and follows abai. Okay, and he can't testify whatsoever. And as a result, we can now better appreciate, okay, the fact that Rashi, Art Scroll, etc., listed for us the 6 items where Abaye is accepted and includes aid in this case. Okay, but let's go on now. All right, because the Gemara hasn't finished this issue. Okay, Vaha itutav. But here, this was refuted by the previous Braita, says the Gemara. Hahi Rabbi Yossi, which seems to imply it's according to Rabbi Yossi. V'tahave nami Rabbi Yossi. So let us say then that it's according to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Meir Rabbi Yossi, halacha Rabbi Yossi. Because normally we say in a machloket between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi that the halacha is according to Rabbi Yossi. However, says the Gemara tells us, Shani Hata. It's different in that situation. Why? Okay, in this Hatam there. Why? Because the language, the way Rebbe formulated the language of a Mishnah, the Satam Lantana, the way Rabbi, right? Rebbe Meir, that he made the language a stam situation, and we generally say stam Mishnah is like Rabbi Meir, right? Veheches satamla, and where is it? Do we say that he?
Our Mishnah is quoted with Meir,
Right,
so
right.
We don't have a
So we don't. So where? So that's what the Gemara is asking. Why is that the case? Okay, kiha. Okay, as in here, the bar chama katal nafshe, a situation where the bar chama, an individual by the name of bar chama, And we're going to get into a story here to try to clarify this view. Katal nafshe is suspected, I'm going to use the word for the moment, of killing a person. Okay. By the way, look at also 27a4, number 29. If you have our scroll, put a little mark next to that. Okay. Amarle Reish Galuta Rav Abba Bar Yaakov, and the Reish Galuta tells his secretary or associate Rav Abba Bar Yaakov, look into this. Huk iyen ba. Okay, examine it. See the situation. Ivadai katal, if indeed that he killed a person, right? What are we going to say? The Gemara uses the lashon lichayuto laane. We're going to gouge out his eyes. Okay, Art Scroll points out to us that, of course, they could not really carry out such a situation in real action. So what it meant was either to confiscate possessions of the individual or to excommunicate.
Rashi says he really could. The problem was that this is a death penalty case, but a Besdin in Babel can't apply.
All right.
So he meant really punish him physically, but we can't kill him.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go with Art Scroll more than Rashi in this case. Okay. All right. And that the fact is, yes, the person needs to be, if we can't give him a true physical act, okay, to punish him, which would normally be the case, but we can do some sort of act to clearly, okay, all right? But what happens as we go on to the story? Atu tre sahade, as idu be devadai katil. Along came, I'm going to say, two witnesses, and they clearly testified that indeed he had killed. Azal ihu aite tre sahade. Then he brought two other witnesses, Asidu Bey, Bechad Mehinach, and they testified against one of the previous two witnesses. Okay? Chad Amar Kamai Didi Ganav Kava Dechushla. One of those second set of witnesses said that before me, this person stole shelled barley. Okay, v'chadamar, and the other, okay, of the second set of witnesses says v'chadamar kamai didi, okay, ganav, right, tata the borte, that before me, in front of me, okay, what did he steal? He stole the handle of a spear. Okay, so what happened? Okay, on top of the new Amarle Maidate, is what's your view? Karabi Meir, are you then going to paskin according to the views of Rabbi Meir? Okay, that person then, okay, that one individual from the first set of witnesses, therefore his testimony is invalid. Okay, Rabbi Meir v'Rabbi Yossi, halacha k'Rabbi Yossi. With Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi, the law generally is according to Rabbi Yossi. What happened? For Rabbi Yossi ha'amar huzam b'dinei mamonot, and it was Rabbi Yossi who said that when a person was invalidated in a financial case, nevertheless, I'm going to read in kasher l'dinei nefashot. Okay, he is acceptable to testify in a capital case. Amar here, Rav Papi is going to come to the rescue. Okay, telling you in advance. Okay, Amarle, he said, Rav Papi, Hani Mili, Hecha de lo Satam Lan Rabbi Meir. That's in a situation where Rebbe did not phrase the language of the Mishnah according to the view of Rabbi Meir. That's where we could act. Hacha, but here, Satam Lan Tanak Rabbi Meir, that the Rebbe, in putting the lashon of the Mishnah, established it according to the view of a star Mishnah, namely, therefore we would follow but Rabbi Meir. Mimai, on what basis? Meha. If we say it's from this, Ditznan, that we're taught in the Mishnah, Kol hara'ui ladun, dinei nefashot, whoever is appropriate to adjudicate cases, capital cases, ra'ui ladun dinei mamonot, is also appropriate to adjudicate monetary cases. Mani, according to whom? Ilema Rabbi Yossi. Were we to say that this is the view of Rabbi Yossi, ha ika eid zomem de mamon de kasher ledine nefashot. But here, isn't it still Rabbi Yossi who claims that a witness invalidated in a monetary case would be available and viable as a witness for a capital case? Upasil ledine mamonot. And he would only be invalid in a monetary case. Right. Ella, rather, love Rabbi Meir. Therefore, we have to therefore determine that it has to be according to Rabbi Meir. Mimai, on what basis, says the Gemara? Dilma psulei yichasin kai. Maybe we were simply talking about a question of the validity of his pedigree, of his family background. De'ilo temahachi, because if we don't say that, Seifa, the end of the mission, the katani yesh ra'ui ladun dinei mamonot, where it says that if he is suitable to adjudicate monetary cases, ve'ein ra'ui ladun dinei nefashot, and not suitable to adjudicate capital case. Amai eino ra'ui. Why would he not be suitable? The idzam bedinei nefashot, because he was invalidated in a adjudication regarding capital case. Ra'ui ladun dinei mamonot, and then he would be eligible to adjudicate.
Or a mamzer.
Is not eligible.
Money is there.
Not on under nefashot. Okay. Right? In other words, those who are on the 23 court, okay, have to have a certain, let's call it status for the moment. Yichus. Exactly. Okay, that's the point. Ha, and here, divrei hakol pasulhu. But it would seem, according to the language of that particular state, okay, everybody agrees that he's invalid. Ele bepasul yuchasin kai. And therefore we must be dealing with an example of invalid pedigree. Okay, Herod. Achanami, here too, bepasul yuchasin kai. We must also then be talking about a case of invalid yuchasin. Ella hacha, but here, kastam lantana. But here we see clearly that Rebbe has established the language as like a stam Mishnah. Ditznan, as taught clearly in the Mishnah, Elu hein hapsulim. These are the ones who are invalid. Number one, Hamisachek Bakubia. This is our Mishnah. Okay, a brisa, similar to our Mishnah. Okay, so Hamisachek Bakubia, one who plays dice. Alvei rivit. Okay, and one who does involve with the ribis, with interest. Umafriche yonim, and we're arguing that could be one who races pigeons. V'sochrei shvi'it, and merchants involved in shmita, va'avadim, and slaves. Okay, zehaklal, and therefore this is the general principle. Kol edut she'ein ha'isha ksherala, any testimony in which a woman would not be valid, afhein ein kshurin la, so they also are not considered valid. Mani, according to whom? Ilema Rabbi Yossi, were we to say that this was Rabbi Yossi? Vaha'ika edut b'dinei nefashot. But isn't he the one who says that in testimony regarding capital cases, she'ein ha'isha ksherala, that a woman is not valid. Okay? Ve'hein ksherin la, but they are valid, right? Ella, lav Rabbi Mehi, and therefore is it not to be determined that the language there is based on the view of Rabbi Meir. Okay, and that's your Stam Mishnah exactly. As a result of Rav Papi's explanation and clarification, what happens, says the Gemara, Kam Bar Chama, Bar Chama got up, Nashke Akarai, he kissed him, Rav Papi on his feet, on his legs, right? And what did he do? Vikable lekarga, and he established, went to the royal authority to absolve Rabbi Papi from the head tax, the Kuli Shani. Okay, for all the well, but the point is, well, let's put a little more meat into it. Come on, Mike. Wasn't a bribe. Wasn't a bribe. The Kuli Shani for all his reasons. Or that could be. He could have paid it himself. Could have paid it himself, right? In any case, he wanted to show Rav Papi his grateful appreciation for getting him off the potential.
Why does it
case.
usually go according to one rabbi against another rabbi all the time in advance? I can understand Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, but why over here with? Do you always go according to
Okay,
that one
I will
rabbi?
answer you, but not at this moment. Okay, all right. I'll come back to it. I want us to.
Okay.
Okay, but we'll get back to you. Okay.
It should be noted that capital cases were abolished, so to speak, 40 years before the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Did not.
Okay, but remember that's true in Eretz Yisrael, but in Bavel they couldn't do capital cases whatsoever. Okay. However, in a history of halacha, just to point something out, okay, later on in Spain, okay, in the more 1400s around there, they actually did allow a beis din to carry out capital case. Okay. All right. Okay. Our new Mishnah, right? Ve'elu hein hakrovim. Okay, we keep saying that one of the examples by which we would invalidate somebody as a witness, and certainly as a judge, is if they're a relative. Okay, all right? Now, we're going to see, I'm going to go through just to the bottom of the Amud, okay, today. But in this case, I want us to see the fact that there is what would appear to be an earlier Mishnah and a later Mishnah. Okay? All right. Matnitin says our Mishnah. Ve'elu heina krovin. And these are what we define as relatives. Achiv, his brother. Okay? Va'achi aviv, the brother of his father. Va'achi imo, and the brother of his mother. Okay? Right? Okay. Next section. Ubal achotel, the husband of his sister. Ubal achot aviv, and the husband of his father's sister. Ubal achot imo, and the husband of his mother's sister. Ubal imo, and the husband of his mother. But it could be a second stepmother.
Stepmother.
Okay? All right. Or stepfather.
Mhm.
Wait.
Brother's husband.
No.
Stepfather.
Okay, could be. Okay. V'chamav, his brother-in-law. Okay. I'm father-in-law. Chamav, father-in-law. V'giso, his mother-in-law. Okay. Brother-in-law. Brother-in-law. Okay. Hain, they, ubneihem, and their sons. Okay. V'chatanehem, and their sons-in-law. Okay. V'chorgo levado. Okay. And his stepson only. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yossi, says Rabbi Yossi, Zo Mishnat Rabbi Akiva. That was the Mishnah, the way it was formulated, I'm going to suggest, by Rabbi Akiva. Of our Mishnah Rishonah, but an earlier version of the Mishnah, okay? Dodo, his uncle, Uben Dodo, and the son of his uncle, his cousin. V'chol hara'ui liyorsho, and anyone who is worthy, suitable to be an heir to him. V'chol hakarov lo ba'ota sha'a, and anyone who was close to him at that time. As
relative at the time of the event.
okay, all right. So what do we mean?
What about a good
Well,
friend?
I'm going to keep it. You're right that it could be a relative. Okay, v'chol hakarov lo. But I also want to point out that it could be close to him as well, because the Gemara is going to go on and say something else. Haya karov v'nitrachek harei ze kasher. If he was once close to the person, okay, and then distance for some reason, they would be valid. Now, what happens? What there's a reason I'm not disagreeing. Right, later.
Here it means, what we're saying
We'll get
is,
to it.
if your sister was married to Harry and Harry watched you do something, and then they get divorced, and now the trial, he's no longer a relative, he's still invalid.
Yes, I'm
But
not.
if they got divorced the day before you commit the crime, then he is a valid.
Right. I'm not
You have
disagreeing.
to use
Wait,
the word karov,
no,
meaning
no.
relative, or that doesn't make sense.
That is one shot. The reason I'm saying it's more than that is because the Gemara is going to then give us an example, another example. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda says, Afilu meta bito. Even, for example, if his daughter died. Okay, so what about the son-in-law? Right? V'yesh lo banim mimena, harei ze karov. In that case, they are still considered a relative.
Relative, it's okay.
Wait. No, we're going to go on now. Ha'ohe v'hasone. What? That's maybe
Then he's
different.
no longer a relative.
Then he's not a relative. Right.
Because she-
Now, wait a second. Now we get to another example, which is why I was expanding. Okay. Wait. Don't rush ahead. Ha'ohev, one who is a close associate. Okay. Vahasone, or one who hates him. Ohev, what do we mean by someone who is a close associate, a good buddy? All right. Zeh shushbano. It's like a groomsman. Okay, so we're implying that even that person, even though they're not a direct relative, would still not be a valid witness. Okay? Wait, we'll get to it. Hold on. Sone, okay, what do we mean when we say sone? Somebody who hates the person. Kol shelo diber imo shlosha yamim ba'eva. One who does not have communication with him out of anger or hate for more than 3 days. See? All right, so those people then also would be prohibited. Okay. Now, however, Amarle, so he said to him, Lo nechshdu Yisrael al kach. His argument is in the end of the Mishnah, okay, that no, Jews don't behave that way. Okay, that's the statement of the Mishnah. So in this case, if we accept that view, the Amarle, okay, if we accept that view, then the good buddy or the enemy would still, could still test. Okay, now let's go on. That's why I say, let's take the Gemara and the Mishnah step by step. Gemara, Menahani Mili, on what's the basis of this? Asks the Gemara. The Tana Rabbanan, because we learned in a bright. Lo yumtu avot al banim. Okay, says the pasuk that one cannot die on the testimony of somebody of that next generation. Ma Talmud Lomar, what are we here for saying? What is it trying to tell us? Im lilamed, shalo, if it comes to teach us. Shaloyim to avot ba'avon bani, that a father doesn't die due to the sins of the son. Ubanim ba'avon avot, or the sons die due to the sins of the fathers, Hare Kfar Ne'amar. That's already said elsewhere in another pasuk, where the pasuk says, Ish bechat o yumatu. Okay, that a person will die based on their own act, their own crime, their own sin. Ella, rather, lo yumtu avot al banim be'edot banim. Ubanim lo yumtu al avot be'edut avot. Okay, we have trying to understand it and a dash in the pasuk this way, that a father does not die on the testimony of his sons, and sons do not die on the testimony of their father. Okay, banim ba'avon avot lo. Are you really saying that sons, based on the sins of the fathers? No, that's not the case. Vahaktiv. But elsewhere we have a pasuk again that's written, Pokeda von avot al banim. All right, don't we have a pasuk? That's exactly, we have a pasuk that tells us. Hatam, there in that case, Kashe'ochzin ma'aseh avotein biyadeim. It's when they follow the same wrong, sinful pattern, okay, sinful pattern of their father.
Nabonim also, I think.
Right? Kidatanya, as taught elsewhere in a Braita, Va'af ba'avonot avotam atem yimaku, ki she'ochazim ma'aseh avoteim biyadeim. Okay, that here too we're saying that it's that the next generation followed in the negative behaviors, the sins of the fathers. Attempts.
Already, they're not babies of the adults.
Right. Atem yimaku kshe'ochazim ma'aseh avoteim biyadeim. Ata omer kshe'ochazim. Okay, you say it's when they maintain. I'm going to use that word. Those negative behaviors. O eno ela kshe'eno chazim. Or is it not if they don't maintain those behaviors? Kshehu omer ish bechet o yumatu. When it says that a person dies based on their own acts, sinful acts, hare kshe'ochzin ma'aseh avotein biyadeim. Velo, and that's not the case. Vaktiv, why? Because it's also written, v'kashlu ish ba'achiv, ish ba'avon achiv melamed. That's what it's talking about. Okay? Shekulan arevim ze bazeh. That one is connected with the other. Hatam, there, however, shahaya biyadam limchot velo michu. And there the situation was that they had the opportunity to reject, to protest, and they did not protest. And tomorrow we'll pick up on the topic of that discussion.
So why do they always?
Okay. So what happened? Okay. A later generation of scholars. Okay. Let's take an example. If you have a machloket between Rav and Shmuel, they were first generation Amoraim. Now, the Gemara is going to might tell us later, and often ask the question, okay, is it possible that later generation of Amoraim could have had the same argument? Let's say Abai Barav, fourth generation Amoraim,
Same argument.
could have had the very same argument. Okay? Okay. So at some point, another later generation of Amoraim, or it could be that it has to say, we can't leave this item open-ended. We have to come to some sort of a decision.
Which is no decision in the first place.
There could have been no decision in the first generation.
Okay.
And that's why a number of generations later, Abai and Rabbah can argue the same argument.
Right.
Okay? But in the sixth generation or the seventh generation, when Ravina and Rav Ashi
Same argument.
are trying to, I don't want to say close the Gemara, but are trying to, the same way Rebbe had to edit the Mishnah and bring it to some. Okay, so Ravina and Rav Ashi felt it was necessary to do the same thing because already, remember, by that time you also had other books. You had the Tosefta. That was Rabbi Yosef. So then that's why we always get into this question of, well, here we have a Mishnah, but we have a Tosefta, which Rebbe didn't include, but it deals with the very same situation.
So in other words, it's a question mark until the sixth or seventh generation.
Exactly. So that's when you get to a
Then they
point
close it
where
out.
somebody has to come to a conclusion.
Right.
And that's why then, in a sense, where it says Behilchata Kevate to so and so is almost, excuse the expression, like an editorial comment by Ravina and Rava. What happens, however, is that later, having seen that that was done, okay, you then have situations where the Gaonim, okay, as they teach the Gemara and they present, have to respond to that kind of question, okay? And so you have situations where then individuals come along, later individuals, and say, people aren't going to have the learning. They need a, what I'll call for the moment, a halachic digest. They need a more abbreviated version of the Gemara's sugya, of the Gemara's discussion. So therefore, one of the first examples of that kind of halachic digest, okay, is the Rabbi Alfa, the Rif, Rabbi Alfazi Barak. What does he do in the back of the Gemara? You have the Rif, where he gives almost like a running uh, discussion of the Gemara in abbreviated form. So and so said this, so and so said that, and the halacha is here's A, here's B, and the halacha is.
But why is it always that man? Was he that person? In other words,
Good question. So now we, so now we, so you're asking, why did a later generation decide according to X as according to Y?
in all cases,
Not all,
most cases,
in many cases.
many.
Okay. So let's take a few examples. Let's take again the example I gave. In a machloket between Rav and Shmuel. Okay? Rav, since he had studied in Eretz Yisrael and then came to Babylonia and was the first generation of Amorim, was felt to have more direct authority, having had a direct source with Eretz Yisrael. However, Shmuel, in certain situations, because he was more familiar in Babylonia with science, with medicine, with things like that. In certain situations, the halacha will be according to him.
Because he had better knowledge.
So he had more, so to speak, familiarity with that subject matter. So that's why in that case, some decisions will be according to Rav, some decisions according to Shmuel. In a later generation, coming back to our Abaye and Rav, there we see that there were situations where they felt Abaye, who was actually the younger colleague, okay, okay. Nevertheless, they could very well have felt that his argumentation, okay, on his thought process, okay, in those situations was more convincing and therefore would have decided.
So it's all got to do with experience, basically knowing knowing
but-
the subject. Yeah.
But that's true today.
Yeah,
Too.
absolutely.
Why do you think that somebody like Rab Moshe finds, or some of the Rebbeim, for example, when Rabbi Yasser is sharing with us the response of the chuvas of this particular individual, Rab Silverstein. Okay? Why was his views accepted so much? Because, number one, he himself was a major force. But his father-in-law was considered Gadol Hador. So if he had issues that he wasn't totally sure,
He would ask
about,
his
who would he
father.
talk to?
Yeah.
He would discuss it with his father. Okay? Despite the fact that he himself was a recognized Posek, he had always somebody to turn to.
What was that Feinstein's forte? In what area?
But the fact, remember, this is all showing that there had to, that this is why, for example, years later, in more modern times, okay, when we look at certain text for halakha, most people will say, well, we study Shulchan Aruch with Mishnah Berurah. Right? Now, Mishnah Berurah is an outstanding source of halakha. However, the author of the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim, was primarily a, I'll put it this way, a Rosh Yeshiva.
Right.
He lived in the yeshiva community, in the Shiva world. On the other hand, at the same time, there was another rabbi who wrote a similar text called the Aruch HaShulchan. But what was he? He was a pulpit rabbi in another community in Russia. So on the one hand, the Chafetz Chaim is going to reflect the yeshiva community and that level of learning in Poland. The author of the Aruch HaShulchan, okay, however, is going to reflect more of a communities issue because he dealt with people all the time. So there are times when, yes, we study the Mishnah Berurah, and we might make a decision on that. But there are times when somebody who has enough halakhic background as Rav may decide, I want to see what the Aruch HaShulchan says in the very same issue, because I want to see what a congregational rabbi dealt with and how he decided, as opposed to somebody, and I won't say the Chafetz Chaim lived in an ivory tower. Okay, he had dealing, but there is going to be. So a good posek has to be familiar with not only the text, but the context.
I understand.
Okay?
Thank you. I understand.
That's why I said, let me take the few minutes.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
you.
I understand. Guy to sometimes.
Okay.